The biggest fear that CSR, it's just about really not knowing and looking. I think they feel like they might feel dumb if they don't know what they're talking about.
Maybe not a week or two later, but if it's been 8 or 9 months, be like, hey, I see we talked to you about life insurance. Did you ever get that solved? Did you ever find a solution?
If you realize how important it is to protect their family and their assets if something happens to them, that is what you use to sell it.
All right, guys, we are here with Josh Callahan from C Group Insurance, one of the greatest of all time, the GOAT of Erie life insurance sales, as it's been described to me. Josh has a 6-location agency in Virginia with about 15 people, writing several hundred Erie life insurance apps every year, including and also have as a final expense company. And we have Stephen Harrington Dakota and Therese Potter here today too. But we're here to unlock something I think that is probably going to be the all-time downloaded podcast of this 4-podcast series, which is, why does our team hesitate to ask for life insurance? So Josh has unlocked this in a big, big way. His non-licensed CSRs are the feeder system. Like, they're consistently asking. And, I want to start first. Some of the reasons we came up with is, one, CSRs don't like rejection. So there's a fear of rejection. Maybe we'll have Josh, you start, like, how do you kind of overcome that when CSRs hear like, oh, yes, no problem. Like, let me get this for you. They don't hear no a lot.
So for us, and we just try to make everyone understand that, fear is, it's just about not knowing, right? And it's the same thing. But when you do it enough and you have the same approach with every client, you're going to get more no's than yeses, right? But it still matters. And that's the big thing that we've always tried to get across is, like, no matter if they don't want it or not, we've talked about them, we've done our job. You fulfilled your obligation as their CSR, like you're looking out for them. So that's one of the big things. But then it's also the fear of the knowledge piece. It's like, I'm going to say something wrong, or I don't know what I'm doing, or, what if they yell at me or whatever. Like you said a minute ago with the rate increases and everything, that's where the yelling comes from, right? Like, and we're still selling life insurance even in this climate. And we spend the majority of our day dealing with rate. Like, that's what they're doing. But it still doesn't give you an excuse not to ask. Right. Like, we still need that information. And what Stephen was talking about, or it might have been Trace, about the putting it in the IMS or your the profile of the person. So, like, granted, this is a question I get a lot from the agencies that I'm training. They're like, do you keep asking these people? And I was like, no, you put it in there, right? And when the CSR, if they call again a week later, they're going to see that they asked them. Now, you can follow up and be like, hey, I know we asked you about life insurance, last week at this time, what? So, yeah, you can get into a situation, if you don't have a way to document that, you could have it to where someone different's asking about life insurance all the time, and you got to make sure you can manage that. But the biggest fear that CSR, it's just about really not knowing and looking. I think they feel like they might feel dumb if they don't know what they're talking about. But we don't need them to be experts. We need them to do a simple thing.
Yeah, and I know, Stephen, we've talked a lot to clients too about how no means not right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that you planted the seed. Teresa had said it in an earlier podcast. They might call you back in 3 months. No means not right now. So, Stephen, how do you approach that as like a trainer to help people understand kind of what Josh said? Because we go into agencies and help kind of unpack a lot of this stuff too, right?
I think first of all, helping them see the value to the client of the product that they're talking about, so that they can share the story or know that it's important, so they feel good at least talking about it and planting that seed. I think that then with good documentation in the management system, it maybe not a week or two later, but if it's been 8 or 9 months, be like, hey, I see we talked to you about life insurance. Did you ever get that solved? Did you ever find a solution? Asking those soft questions to reopen the door, or at least get an answer. They're like, yes, I got it with X, Y, and Z. Great. I'm going to put a note in the file that that's where you went.
That's right. And you're not beating them up over that, right? You're not saying, oh, well, odds are they didn't get anything, but that right there, I like what you said, because we're okay if they have it somewhere else, as long as they have it. I got that.
And then, then it's even during an annual review, if I'm looking at the notes and I see that we talked about it, they went somewhere else, I can still bring it up again in a friendly way, because I'm reviewing their account. I'm trying to make sure what's going on, see if anything's changed. I'll be like, do you still have that policy with carrier X? And they'll be like, what policy? And I'll be like, okay, well, we should probably look at a solution again.
No, and you know what? If someone went somewhere else besides your agency, that's a training point too. right? Like, what are we doing? And that don't really happen to us. It's more of along the lines of they already do have something and we're putting it in there already, right? It's not so much that we just dropped the ball and they went and bought somebody down the street, which that is that way with final expense. And that's what agencies don't understand. But yeah, you're right. Having that knowledge of everything that they have. So that way, because you're their advisor, and it's okay if they have it because you can always add to it up. That's super important. I'm glad you talked about that.
Well, and I also think too, I want to say, like, no means not right now. They might call back. But when you do hear, oh, I have it with my employer, I think that there's a lot of scripts and things like that that you can also utilize. Like, so the point is, yes, they have it, but if I change jobs and go someplace that doesn't, and I have a health condition now, I'm not getting it, like,
Well, that,
or
that's what
your kids need it.
That's what I've been screaming. My spouse worked at the same job for 26 years, had amazing life policy, left, and thank goodness we had all the other layers for the jobs we were never going to leave because they didn't qualify even for their employer's life insurance plan any longer because of health issues.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, at least we have enough to pay the bill.
Yeah.
Something happened.
Well, so that, I mean, you guys all bring up really, really good points. Therese, as kind of somebody who's done CE credits and training and everything else too, I also want to talk a little bit, a lot of account managers, I call them scuba divers. Like, they feel like they need to know all the things. Like, well, Josh, what happens if we get somebody who's divorced, who smokes, who has diabetes, but is 23 years old and 350 pounds overweight? What exactly do I say to them? And they want to like have 700 different scenarios, right? So I think there's this fine line of having more confidence in talking about it, but also not over educating them to the point of life insurance where they overthink it, right? So Therese, how would you approach that kind of with your background in doing CE and how you did it, when you guys, because I do feel like the pushback always gets like, well, I don't know anything about life. I need to know everything. And I'm like, you actually are better off if you know less.
Yeah, I was thinking that sometimes, just like when you're taking the PNC license, if you've worked in an agency prior, you're going to have more trouble taking that test than if you know nothing about insurance and you're just studying for the test. I started insurance not knowing anything about insurance, took the course for a week, passed the test that next Saturday, and the same thing happens with life. If you realize how important it is to protect their family and their assets if something happens to them, that is what you use to sell it. You don't use all the other background information. Personally, I recommend, go take the life licensing course. It's easier. It's way easier than the PNC is. The life and health, I felt it was. So I just went and took it just to have a little bit more knowledge of, what's a term, what's a whole life policy, what is an indexed UL, just to have that base. But that didn't make me still feel like I could advise somebody on what policies. I didn't want to just go out and sell a ton of terms. I wanted somebody to sell them the policy that worked perfectly for their lifestyle. So that's why I partnered with a financial person. So I would get the initial conversation of, oh, you had a life event, you got married, you bought a house, you had a kid. And I would push, have you thought about life insurance? Oh, I have it at work. Well, do you know if something happens to that job, you will no longer have that policy and you'll be left without it. So you need something outside of that just as a comfort, an extra. So you have to basically give them the scripts. This is where scripts are incredible because some people are so scared of it. They don't want to talk about it at all. And you'll be like, that's okay. Here's a script. If they give you this objection, this is what you say. And you have to make it mandatory, and a lot of things, we don't like to do things. In my martial arts class, I always say, I had there's somebody in there that doesn't do forms. And my instructor said, oh, we're going to change it so nobody has to do forms. And I said, no, I don't want to do self-defense. I hate self-defense. But if I don't learn it, how am I going to learn to protect myself? That doesn't make sense. We have to do stuff we don't like to learn and to grow and to get better at it. So it's really important that even though somebody doesn't like it, that we make it mandatory and we force them to ask those questions, because once it becomes a routine and a habit, then they do it all the time. And I'm sure Josh sees that. When he makes it a routine, a habit, and they're doing it all the time, it just becomes second nature. And that's what they do because they know that's what their agency does. So you have to get people to do stuff they're not comfortable with, to get them out of their comfort zone and to show them that they can sell life insurance. It is really easy. Just you have to know what to say and what to do.
Yeah. So don't I would just tell agency owners, don't give in to the fact that they need all of it. But how much do you give them, Josh? Right? I'm sure it's not keeping them in the dark. Do they get some 101 life insurance basics training?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of this stuff, Kelly, is when these people say these things are just really at the base of it's just an excuse.
Right.
That's what most of this stuff. I mean, any CSRs push back on that. Most of the time, it's just an excuse for whatever reason. But what we do, and part of our system is that we document everybody that we talk to. We do the whole thing, but then also that one pager that we have that we eliminate people. We get the information that we need, and we make that just so easy to where you can ask those questions, and then at that point, if someone's ready to talk about it, we'll either, if they're not the person that's ever going to be able to do that, right, we have a way to shift that to our life person, right? And that's a great segue with CSRs that either aren't licensed or whatever, and be like, hey, I've got all this information. We've got Sally over here. She's great. She works with all of our people, and she would love to help you. And then I'm gonna pass this to her. And it makes it easier. But what you have to do is have a certain base foundation that everyone can do. And then you will play to the strengths and weaknesses of your team. And because you and I actually had this conversation the other day. There's certain people we don't want a full office of, right? Either good or bad. You couldn't handle it. So and it's a good thing to have a balance. But yeah, we have a basic to where even if you're licensed or not, you can get this basic information for us, and then we can move to who it needs to go to.
So one of the things, Josh, we recommend a lot of times is if agencies are starting on this path because they see such a value and it's going to be an initiative in this 2025, right? We believe in having a strategic plan. If life is a gap you want to go on, that should be it. But I always like to say, and we say this with umbrella policies, we say this anything is, I love it when it's let's get you a quote, get your team a quote, because it's so much easier when they experience the process, I think, to kind of be able to share it. And sometimes they're surprised at how inexpensive a quote for themselves could be, right? And so I always say hey, get a quote yourself. And maybe you don't want your employer knowing some medical things. I can understand that. You could still go anywhere and get a quote and just understand what this all looks like. But many, many people are surprised. And I tell people, I got $2 million to myself when I was 28, and it is $66 a month, and I still have the policy. So, at 28 years old, to protect me for $2 million for $68 a month, at the time sounded monumental expense, right? But today I'm like, wow, that's a great deal. Yeah. I'm surprised my husband hasn't offed me yet. Yeah. Between that and my buy sell, geez, I am worth way more dead than alive. Should probably look into that.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think for some people it's and I say this, and I think Josh has done such a phenomenal job. You also have to make sure if somebody doesn't see the value in buying their own life insurance, are they a good fit? And I'm not talking about, doesn't even have to be 2 million. Could be
right.
50,000. It could be a very small policy that with very minimal underwriting, right?
Yes.
I think they have to have some identification of the belief of the product.
That's 100% true. And it also, like you said, it does help them talk to other people, because everyone has something that they're going to leave behind, right? Whether it be debt, whether it be family, whatever. You very rarely will see a bill. 25. What's that?
A funeral bill?
Yeah. I mean, it's going to happen. And unless you're murdered somewhere and nobody knows where you're at. So, there's always some kind of expense. And then, you can play on the fact of, you don't want to leave nobody as a, burden on anyone, but really it's more than that, right? It's a legacy. It's just, there's a lot of things. And one of the saddest things that I'm ever a part of is when someone passes away and then their kids are having to fund their everything. It's just tough. And really, that's one of the biggest sales pieces when I do final expense. The number one reason is that they don't want to leave that on their family. And I don't even have to say anything about it. So, and that's what you tell your team when they're buying policies on themselves. And there's a good coaching point. Can be like, look, let's look at debt. You can go through it all with them. One of my team members, I must think I'm like a financial guru, but she sends me her debt schedule, and it's like, what can I do? But it is about that education and just sitting down with them and be like, look, this is what could happen. When you're talking to a client, everyone's got needs and they're all in a different spot. And it's nice to be able to help them with that. And that's the one thing that we do that's guaranteed to pay out. And it's a nice thing that we can actually, do that for our clients, because a lot of times life insurance salesmen are seem that like they look at like used car salesmen, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
and I never wanted when I
They're
was
going to
even doing
Steven's house when he buys a house. Like, hey.
yeah, I never wanted to be, and I still don't. I never wanted to be seen like nobody dread seeing me come, right? Like you don't, and that's an approach why it's shifted in my agency to where it's all service based, and we're doing it because we care about you. We want to help you. If you buy it, fine. If you don't, fine. But you do need it, and you are going to sign off on the fact if you decline it. So and then, but when you do that enough, it just happens by nature, right? Like, even if you're not great salespeople, if you put these things in force in your agency, it will happen. And then how you tweak that and how you grow that is how you get to the upper echelon to where you're really killing it. So, yeah, no, I agree. Education is so important.
Well, and I'll leave everybody with this. My dad passed away 5 years ago and he didn't have life insurance, but like, luckily we were we were financially okay. But until I got approved as the executor of the will, we had to pay his mortgage payment because he was, we had to pay his condo dues because you can get foreclosed on. We had to pay for the funeral. And like, it sounds like it all comes very fast, right? Like the funeral homes aren't going to proceed without payment.
They act like they care about you, but it's a money thing. It's a business.
So it's like if people are, and in this economy in particular, people are financially strapped, you have to go through there. And we could have a whole nother conversation about GoFundMe and why you I can't get there today, Josh, but like GoFundMe is not your life insurance.
No,
it's not. No. And and once people realize that they can do it for an affordable amount and get that peace of mind, it becomes an easier thing to overcome.
Well, even 5 years ago, my dad's very modest. He was cremated and like, we just had a lunch, was not, a big to-do soiree, still 12 grand, so it's like 12 grand. And then we're paying his mortgage payment and, there's this and there's that. And you're like getting calls from creditors because, like the electricity bill. I'm like, I don't even know where he has his electricity. Like,
Right.
like, all right. Like, it was just like,
Yep.
we were just like, I guess we just pay it because we don't know what we're doing, and nobody else in my family was going to put that 12 grand up. Let me tell you. So it was
no. And
yeah.
when it comes to money, you can see a terrible side of people in situations like that. So yeah, no, it's nice.
Well, Josh, thank you so much. I hope you guys gleaned some good tips. If you love it and you want to learn more, check out our new course that's launching this month because Josh is co-hosting it with me. So we'll have lots of spirited life insurance conversations. And wouldn't it be great for your team to hear what Josh has to say too, right? Like to get it right out of his mouth of like how he's positioning it, what he's giving his team members to make it seem simple and easy, because so many team members and agencies, I think, are so isolated, right? They only know their little ecosystem. So this is a huge opportunity for you to get to know a little bit more. So thank you, Josh, for joining us. This has been super fun.
Thank you. Awesome.
All right, everybody. Well, we appreciate you. We'll see you in our next podcast.